Okay, so let's just say the obvious part out loud first. The guy asking the Senate for permanent control of the Justice Department built his entire career defending the president from that same department. Todd Blanche was Donald Trump's personal criminal defense attorney across 4 indictments, ran the legal strategy, told juries the charges were political persecution. And now, he wants the Senate to hand him command of the most powerful prosecutorial office in the country. Here's the thing, though. In the months since Trump made him acting AG, he's already done things with that office that a federal judge, just 2 days before this hearing, ruled amounted to a fraud on the court. You cannot make this up. Senator Mazie Hirono laid out the case. Watch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Blanche. To ensure the fitness to serve of all nominees who come before any of my committees, I ask the following 2 initial questions. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
Mr. Blanche, over the course of the past 5 months, the New Mexico Department of Justice has talked to your staff about getting access to information for its investigation into an alleged crime at Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch. Will you and your team continue to cooperate with the New Mexico Department of Justice and help it get the information it needs?
Yes, we're continuing to work with them, and yes.
Thank you.
Senator.
Mr. Blanche, at an April 8th press conference, a reporter asked you a question about President Trump's desire to see his perceived political enemies prosecuted. You answered, quote, "That is his right, and indeed it is his duty to do that." To clarify, Mr. Blanche, do you believe it is the president's right and duty to order the investigation or prosecution of his perceived enemies? Yes or no?
I can't answer that yes or no. That wasn't the question. And my answer was that as the President of the United States, under Article 2, he's in charge of the Department of Justice. And so my answer reflects that idea, not that he has a right to go after his political enemies.
Reclaiming my time, I think that what the President meant was pretty clear, and I just wanted to know whether you thought that that is indeed his right and duty to prosecute his perceived enemies. So let me get to that. Investigations of the president's perceived enemies aren't theoretical. They are happening. For example, last August, President Trump posted on social media that George Soros should be charged with RICO. Weeks later, one of your deputies directed several U.S. attorneys' offices to investigate Soros's charitable foundations for violating the RICO statute. Mr. Blanche, to confirm, were the U.S. attorneys' offices asked to launch these investigations because of the president's post? Yes or no?
I'm not even confirming that they were asked to, but most certainly not because of any truth
well, the
from
president definitely,
Trump.
excuse me, the president definitely posted that Mr. Soros should be charged with RICO, and lo and behold, several weeks later, that is exactly what your office sought to have done. Since last year, DOJ has sued 30 states seeking their voter lists. 14 of those lawsuits have been resolved by federal judges. Mr. Blanche, did any of those 14 federal court judges from across the country agree with DOJ's legal position? Again, yes or no?
With some of the legal positions, yes.
Pardon?
The answer to the question is yes. Some of the judges agreed
14
with some,
judges?
Agreed with some of our legal positions, and most of those cases are under appeal.
Actually, that's not correct. The answer is actually no. These 14 federal judges, some of them were Trump appointees, disagreed with DOJ's position in terms of getting access to these voter rolls.
Well, I think
it's all part of DOJ's attempt and the president's attempt at election interference. We know that federal judges are a problem for you, certainly a problem for President Trump, because they actually care about facts and evidence. And that's why last fall at a Federalist Society event, you called for young lawyers at that event to join you in fighting a war. And you said, we need you because it's a war, and it's something we will not win unless we keep on fighting. The war that you were talking about was against federal judges who were ruling against the administration, correct?
No.
Well, then do you believe that judges should be impeached based on their rulings against this administration and the president? Yes or no?
No. No, I don't believe that.
On that, you disagree with the president because you believe judges should be impeached for disagreeing with them. President Trump sees DOJ not only as a tool to attack his enemies, but also useful for helping his friends. To that end, on May 18th, you signed an Attorney General order establishing funding and setting out requirements for the so-called anti-weaponization fund, correct? You signed such an order?
Yes, I did sign that document, yes.
Have you rescinded that order?
Yes, the order is no longer in effect. There is no weaponization fund,
Mr.
correct.
Blanche, that is not my question. My question is, did you rescind that order?
Yes, I'm doing it under oath right now.
No,
it does not exist.
No, when you answer that there is no fund, that is not rescinding the order, because you can resurrect that order at any time. So actually, your answer is no, you have not rescinded that order. Mr. Blanche, one of your first acts as a Deputy Attorney General was to issue a memo eviscerating DOJ's enforcement work against crypto criminals. Crypto crime surged in 2025. Mr. Blanche, are you aware that Americans reported over $11 billion in crypto fraud losses to the FBI last year?
Our crypto enforcement is way up compared to a year and a half ago. So I didn't eviscerate anything. To the contrary, actually, we empowered AUSAs around the country to go after criminals in the right circumstances, and we continue to do it.
I take it you are not aware that there were reports of over $11 billion in crypto fraud reported to the FBI. That was my question. Are you aware or are you not aware?
Are you talking about the fraud that we have prosecuted?
No, I'm talking about the $11 billion worth of crypto crime. This is a pretty good, simple question.
I just don't understand.
Are you or are you not aware? But it doesn't seem you're aware because you're making all kinds of excuses. The fact is that crypto enforcement, you eviscerated that work that your department is supposed to be doing. And so anyway, Mr. Blanche, when you issued your memo ending crypto crime enforcement, you held significant amounts of cryptocurrency yourself. And I sent you several letters asking you about it, and I am still awaiting your answer. Mr. Blanche, it is clear to me that your leadership is going to be a continuation of what we have seen so far at the Trump Department of Justice, or more likely to be called the Department of Retribution and Corruption. You see nothing wrong with the president treating DOJ as his own personal law firm to use as a weapon against his perceived enemies and as a way of helping his friends, and as a tool to interfere with the upcoming elections. The states run elections in this country, but you want to insert DOJ at every step of the process, suing the states with frivolous claims and sending threatening letters to secretaries of state. You want to suppress the votes of American citizens who will have a chance to resoundingly reject the president's corruption at the ballot box this November. You signed a memo eviscerating DOJ's cryptocurrency enforcement work, leading to a surge in Americans being victimized by cryptocurrency fraud. You also championed a slush fund for the president's allies who attacked police officers on January 6th. From the beginning, we all knew that that's what this fund was for, but now we have findings of fact from a federal judge concluding that the fund came out of a fake lawsuit filed solely to lend an air of legitimacy to the president's attempt to compensate his insurrectionist allies. You played a key role in attempting to perpetuate this fraud on American taxpayers, and you oversaw the botched release of the Epstein files, denying justice once again to survivors who have been waiting so long for it. You have no business being the Attorney General of the United States of America. I certainly urge my colleagues to vote against your confirmation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I mean, Chairman, on the crypto point, our crypto prosecutions are way up, and it is very true that crypto fraud is a thing, and it's still happening. But getting rid of a task force of a bunch of lawyers in Washington, D.C. did nothing more than empower AUSAs around the country to bring cases, which is what they've done. So I'm proud of the work that we're doing in that space. And
Okay, so that's only part of the story. Here's the rest of it.
On July 13, 2026, U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams handed down a 56-page ruling finding that Trump's $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS was brought for an improper purpose. Her conclusion basically was that the case existed to manufacture judicial cover for an immunity arrangement that had already been decided on, benefiting the president and his associates. And she didn't stop at just ruling against it. She sanctioned his private attorneys, barring one of them from practicing in the Southern District of Florida for a full year. She referred Blanche to state bar authorities for possible discipline. She permanently barred anyone in the case from ever calling that deal a settlement again in future proceedings. That ruling dropped Monday. The confirmation hearing opened the same week. Unbelievable. And here's a detail that mostly got buried. That $1.776 billion figure, the deliberate nod to 1776, which Williams herself flagged in the ruling, came with an addendum nobody really highlighted. The day after the fund's announcement, the acting attorney general appended a provision permanently barring the IRS from ever investigating the president, his sons, his businesses, or their associated entities for any past tax conduct. Williams found that provision directly violated a federal law that explicitly bars executive officials from influencing tax audits. Constitutionally suspect, her words. And the guy who signed that memo told senators today, quote, "The fund is dead." Sure it is. This actually goes back further, months before that fund even existed. On April 7, 2025, he issued a 4-page memo titled Ending Regulation by Prosecution. It disbanded the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team, the unit DOJ built starting in 2022 to track financial crime and money laundering on digital asset platforms, and ordered prosecutors nationwide to stop pursuing regulatory violations across the crypto industry. Here's the part that really gets me. When he signed that memo, he personally held Bitcoin worth somewhere between $100,000 and $250,000, plus positions in Ethereum, Solana, and Cardano, plus Coinbase stock. Legal ethics experts told ProPublica those holdings put him in direct conflict with federal ethics law. He didn't transfer those assets to family members until late May and early June of 2025, weeks after his own memo had already cleared the field for the industry he was personally invested in. And here's what that enforcement gap actually cost real people. The FBI's 2025 Internet Crime Report logged 181,656 complaints tied to cryptocurrency fraud. Total reported losses, $11.4 billion, up 22% from the year before. Americans over 60 were hit hardest, $4.4 billion in losses, nearly 39% of all reported crypto fraud from a group that's only about 23% of the population. Average victim loss, over $62,000. That's retirement savings that don't get rebuilt. If you want to see how this department decides who to go after, look at Soros. August 2025, the president posts that George Soros and his son should face racketeering charges. No evidence offered, just a post. Weeks later, a senior official in Blanche's office sends instructions to at least 6 U.S. attorneys' offices, New York, Maryland, D.C., Detroit, Chicago, California, directing them to submit investigative plans against the Open Society foundations. Possible charges floated: racketeering, wire fraud, arson, material support for terrorism. Reuters confirmed the president presented no evidence when naming Soros as a target. A social media post. 6 investigative plans, weeks later. That's the whole sequence. Compare that to his own stated principle on crypto. The DOJ shouldn't act as a digital assets regulator. The prosecutors should pursue defined crimes with established evidence. One standard produced a memo protecting an industry he personally profited from. A different standard produced investigative machinery against a man the president had named as a target on social media. Sit with that for a second. You want to know how he actually views that judicial resistance? He said it plainly, on the record, 8 months ago. On November 7, 2025, at the Federalist Society's National Lawyers Convention, he described the administration's relationship with the federal judiciary as, quote, a war. We need you because it is a war, and it's something we will not win unless we keep on fighting. He called federal district judges as political as the most liberal governor. He vowed to strip state bar associations of their authority to discipline government attorneys. A coalition of 50 retired federal judges, Republican and Democratic appointees alike, publicly condemned the speech, warning that war rhetoric aimed at the courts posed both a constitutional threat and a physical danger to sitting judges. That warning wasn't abstract. Per U.S. Marshals data, serious threats against federal judges more than tripled over the decade leading into 2025 and accelerated sharply through the year. Death threats at judges' home addresses. One family targeted with pizza deliveries made in the name of a judge's son who'd been murdered years earlier by a gunman posing as a delivery driver. And his response to that climate was to recruit young lawyers into the fight against the judges themselves. Same story, different victims. When Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act in November 2025, mandating the record's release, the rollout exposed survivors' names and email addresses that should have been redacted. The New York Times found dozens of unredacted nude photos of young people. Attorneys for hundreds of survivors told ABC News they were fielding constant calls from clients whose identities the department had just made public, people who'd spent years protecting their privacy. By May 2026, he admitted to Congress under oath that the department failed. His word. Survivors' attorneys said flagged documents weren't pulled down immediately. Sometimes it took days or weeks of follow-up, and some material reappeared online after initially being removed. Justice Connection, a nonprofit that helps current and former DOJ employees navigate legal and ethics issues, organized a letter signed by 1,200 former department employees urging the Senate to vote no. The letter said he attacked the career workforce, firing attorneys, agents, and analysts for improper, unlawful reasons, leaving the department's real work undone, communities less safe, rights less protected, national security more vulnerable. Every person who signed that letter spent a career inside the institution he wants to lead permanently. Every one of them said no. And to be clear, this isn't only coming from Democrats on the committee. Republican Senators John Cornyn and Tom Tillis both raised pointed concerns and pressed hard on the fund. Cornyn told reporters the testimony left him unsatisfied, that the anti-weaponization agreement isn't dead as a matter of contract and remains enforceable as written. With Senator Lindsey Graham's death leaving a committee vacancy that had been expected to support the nomination, Republicans now sit at 11 votes to Democrats' 10. One Republican no kills this before it ever reaches the Senate floor. Before a single question was asked this morning, the record had already written itself. A federal judge ruling 2 days earlier that the lawsuit behind this fund was brought for an improper purpose, with findings sent to the bar where he holds his license. 1,200 career DOJ employees on record saying no. A war declared against the federal judiciary 8 months ago, in his own words. And on the one question this hearing kept circling back to, whether a president has the right and duty to prosecute his perceived enemies, he still, watch it again, never gave a straight answer.